Yo, it's Guido coming at you with a Tactics Talk. Welcome back. Thanks for tuning in, and good morning. I hope you guys have a great day out there. Did you guys know you could buy tanks with bonds? I bet most of you did, but some of you may not actually know that. And did you know that the bond shop has recently been changed? There are some new tanks in the bond shop. Now, there are kind of two bond shops. I'm going to talk about the standard one that everybody has access to. There is a special bond shop that comes up with ranked that you can unlock by getting to Division 2, and then you can buy some special bond tanks in there. But we're going to talk about the standard bond shop that anybody can use. It's not behind a mode wall or anything like that. So bonds are these little guys that you get right up here. You can see I've got 1,953. I recently bought a bond tank in the special bond shop that's attached to ranked. So I only have 1,953. There's many and varied ways to get bonds. You can get them with daily missions. You can get them with other missions that come along in the game. Ranked gives some bonds. So there's lots of ways to get bonds. Also too, and in addition to, you can get them by playing tier 10s. Also, the Sturv K, which is a tier 9 premium, gives bonds now. So there are some ways to get yourself some bonds. They build up slowly in general, and you're going to need quite a few to get into the bond shop. So did you know that the Senlac is in the bond shop now? We have a light tank. That's fantastic. How do you get to the bond shop? Well, you're going to click on the store. That makes sense. Makes sense to me anyway. And you're going to click down here on the bond, the little stack o' bonds sitting down here. Now mine was already clicked because I've already been in here trying to figure all this out for you. There are 4 things you can buy with bonds: vehicles, equipment, directives, and exterior, which is actually camo. All right, I love the words. Anywho, you can see that most of these are in my garage. In fact, all of the bond tanks that are in the bond shop are in my garage, except for the AMX M4 MLE 49 Liberté. I have the other version, the non-Liberté version. I believe it's just the AMX M4 MLE 49. You will see that it is 8,000 bonds. So 8,000 bonds to get a tier 8. This is a premium tank. You will also note that there are 3 tier 10s in the bond shop: the M60, 121 Bravo, and FV215B. What we're going to do today is we're going to pick my 4 favorite, or in my opinion, the best tanks that you can get in the bond shop. Now there's quite a few decent tanks in here, but I'm going to pick 4, a little bit quirky kind of list of 4 here, based on a couple different things that we'll talk about as we go through, but 4 tanks that I really like in the bond shop. I'm going to say in general that the tier 10s are all pretty good. I like them, but they didn't make my list. We're not going to talk about tier 10s. We're going to talk about the lower tiers. So we've got these 3 tier 10s and a bunch of tier 8s at 8,000 bonds. The Senlac, Patton KR, Mutz, Patriot, Chrysler, STG Guard, IS-6B, IS-5, which used to be, I believe, a ranked reward of some kind, Kreslovsky, Alpine Tiger 103, IS-2 Shielded. Now we're dropping down to tier 7. And then we've got some lower tier 5s down here with the Hydrostat, T-35 Shielded, and the RBFM, which come in at less bonds. What are my 4? My 4 are as follows. None of the tier 10s. I didn't pick any of those. I picked the Senlac. One reason is it's the only light tank in the list, but it's also a pretty good little light tank for bonds. Not bad at all. I picked the Guard, which is kind of a goofy little medium, but I really quite enjoy it. It's just a fun tank. I picked the Chrysler. This is a beast. You will remember some years ago there was a big kerfuffle about the Chrysler based on no frontal weak spot and very low pen requiring gold. I'm telling you, this thing is still a monster. The issue of no frontal weak spots is now quite a strength of it. Especially considering power creep, this thing still holds its own. Although it is a quirky, weird, rear-turreted tank, and we'll take a look at a game with that one. Patriot almost made my list. I do like the Patriot, but we're going to slide down, and we're going to pick the T103, which is, I believe, other than the RBFM, the only TD that is in the list right here. So the T103, which is a Russian tier 8 premium TD with a turret, kind of a good gun, really good gun, very hard turret, but very tall and kind of goofy, but also kind of a fun tank that I really quite enjoy. Some runners-up as you're looking at this list and thinking, well, I don't really like those 4 that Guido's going to talk about. What are some of the other ones he kind of likes? I do like the IS-5 after the recent buff. It's okay. The Crest is fun to have because it's quite rare, goofy tank. The Patriot still holds its own, although it's been power crept pretty well. The Mutz is a surprisingly good medium at tier 8. I really would stay away from the Patton KR. It did get a buff a while back, but it's still kind of rough. And I would, excuse me, I would certainly get the tier 10s because having tier 10s is a fun thing in the game. But that will cost you a bunch of bonds right there. And remember, the other thing that's competing for your bonds is a very important thing, bond equipment. And this is quite the advantage in the game. So you're going to have to make those decisions. For example, a venting system is 5,000 bonds. Your tier 8 premium is 8,000 bonds. So if you are looking to be competitive at tier 10, meaning you want to do clan wars or be at the top end of the game, you might want to prioritize some equipment before you grab some tanks. However, if you're looking for crew trainers or you need a tank that you can make some credits with, especially for free-to-play players, this is the beauty of the bond store for free-to-play players. It does access a bunch of premiums which will get you good credits, and all of these will do that if played well. So there you go. Let's launch off. We're going to launch off and we're going to look at the 4 tanks I picked: the Senlac, the Chrysler GF, the STG Guard, and the T103 as my 4 bond tanks that you really should take a look at and consider buying with bonds. Let's get started. Let's start off with a quick overview of the Senlac. We'll do the light tank first. You'll notice it's a 3 crew tank, so it is a good trainer for the British light tanks, but you will also notice it's quite large compared to the LHM TV. So this tank does not exactly operate like the rest of the British light tank line, which are very sneaky little ninja assassins. This is more of a standard light tank. Still fairly stealthy, but not nearly as good stealth-wise as the LHM TV, but it does bring a pretty good average DPM. Let's just talk about the crew real quick. You will be pressured a bit with the crew because the commander is a loader, I believe, and a radio operator all at the same time. Commander, there you go, radio and loader. So that's a lot of pressure, and there's a lot of good skills in there. A bit of a trick. And that's a problem with all of the British light tanks. If we come over here to the gunner, he is a gunner and a loader. That takes a little pressure off the loader skills, but a lot of the gunner skills are pretty good as well. So again, you're going to have to make some tough decisions on which skills you're going to use. As a general rule, intuition is really nice right now, but for light tanks not as important because the reload is so fast anyway, relatively there. And then the last guy here, the driver, all he is the driver. So no help there, but those are some pretty important skills as well. Coming down here to equipment, I'm running optics. I have a CVS. I think that's pretty mandatory. There's a good argument to put the CVS in the bonus slot right there. As far as, I have vents as well. As far as field mods, I'm only up to the level 1 right there, so I have a plus 1% to traverse. What you want to do is unlock those so you can get the second bonus slot right there and do whatever you want with it, firepower or whatever, because vents will work in any of those bonus slots, then you can get some bonus out of vents. There's quite a few options equipment-wise for this tank. As far as something different than what I have, I mean, all these things are in play. If you want to be more combat-oriented, a vertical stabilizer, maybe a rammer, not highly recommended. But we come down here to things like a turbo, which will get it moving a little bit faster. Maybe even binoculars if you want to be one of the sit-down in a bush kind of guys, although that time is pretty well past. Even a low-noise exhaust system. But because this tank is not such a stealth tank as compared to some of the other Brits, I have a slightly more versatile setup, combat-ish oriented, and some stealth. So good view range with the CVS and the optics, and vents helping out with everything. You also notice that I'm running 36 special ammo and 9 HE. It does have a pretty nice HE round. If we click over here, it's got 90 pen, which is pretty decent. 280 damage is not amazing, but 1,000 on the shell velocity is pretty good for an HE round, actually. 189 is decent penetration for a light tank, and up to 223 with gold. So you're not scaring any heavy tanks frontally very much, but that is useful in most situations. And 189 is something you can work around with a light tank. Not too bad at all. If we come over here, you'll see the 180 damage. We talked about the 189. Fires fairly quickly, but not amazingly fast. Gets it up to a respectable, but not amazing, 2,095 DPM and an okay dispersion of 0.32. Hit points are pretty average. 0 armor. You'll note 22, 32. This thing is going to get pinned from every direction. Any bounces you get off of this is purely going to be some weird auto bounce ricochet kind of situation right there. Come down to the mobility, it's fairly decent. It gets up and goes at 65. So it's not a blazer, but that's really moving along pretty decently. Traverse speed is nice. It's actually pretty good for the British tanks. A 35 on the a 49 on the traverse speed is pretty good, because some of the British tanks are kind of known for being a bit sluggish in the turn. And then we get to the camo, which, as I said, is not amazing. So if you wanted to boost the camo, you're going to have to do things like get yourself some low noise exhaust, stuff like that, because you're only sitting at 26%, which is okay, but not absolutely amazing. And just remember, it is a light tank, so it carries its camo as it moves, which is important for light tanks. We get on to spotting. I'm at 501 view range, which is really pretty nice right there. Get some decent burn through. And of course, at tier 8, you can carry the CBS, which gives you all kinds of capability over, say, tier 7 light tanks, because of all of its ability to burn through and the things that it does as far as dropping concealment with guys behind foliage, both moving and stationary, and -10 to concealment of moving. So just that thing is really brutal in terms of scouting. So there's the Senlac overview. Let's take a look at gameplay. Okay, next on the list was the STG Guard. You'll see that I actually have the Guard, the STG and the STG Guard. The Guard is the one that has the permanent camo, which is the one you'll get out of the Bond shop. You can't change the camo. This is what it's going to end up looking like right here. Kind of a neat little camo. Not much to it, though. Just a red splash and some Russian or Cyrillic on there. This is a standard 4-crew commander, gunner, driver, loader, with the commander holding the radio operator skills. You can see I've got a decent crew in there. I am running vents, rammer, and vert stab. Pretty standard as far as just an offensive loadout in there. If we go to the equipment, other options in here could be potentially the IRM if you wanted to drop something, but I think the vert stab is agreed to be superior to that, and I don't think that the traverse on this thing is so bad that the IRM is really going to give you much help right there. I don't think there's much argument for anything else. Maybe turbo, because it's not the fastest tank, but what are you going to get rid of? So if you were going to prioritize some speed, you may drop the vert stab or potentially the rammer. The vert stab is really helpful to this because it doesn't have a great dispersion, so potentially the rammer, but then you're jumping into the fact that it has a relatively long reload at 10.69. So you're giving something up if you're going to get a little bit of extra speed. I'm running 27.6 and 2 in terms of ammo. 27 AP is APCR as the goal. Dab 2, you get to 248. That's not amazing, so that is something you have to work around a little bit for a medium. 212 is okay for a pen, so this thing is not really about the penetration on the gun. High explosive is pretty nice, provided you can pen. It's got 530 average damage. I'm carrying 2 of those bad boys just in case. So let's go ahead and take a quick look over here then, because we mentioned the slowness of the gun loading, but also the 390 average damage. So the alpha on this thing, it absolutely punches hard. It did get a buff to the gun loading, so that's pumped up the average DPM with my setup and crew up to 2,190. Now that's Brothers in Arms. I am not running food right there. That will boost that up a little bit. So it's not amazing, but it's a lot better than it used to be. The aim time is pretty long at 2.28. That's kind of painful. And then 0.3 dispersion isn't great. So this thing it wants to get close to its work, but it has to be a little bit careful, because if we go down to the armor, it's not amazing. The turret's okay at 210. You can get some bounces. It's the Russian kind of rounded turret, so that will give you some help in the cases of them aiming, or maybe you make them hit a little bit off to the side right there. It does have a hatch. That is a slight weak spot there as well. Nicely angled up on the top here, but look at that. It's really pretty flat if you look at that right there. If we get up high, we're going to get these auto ricochet, but holy cow, down there. Plus it's rear turreted, my friends, and that makes it a little bit difficult to kind of maneuver around, but I didn't find that to be too much of a detriment to this thing, because it is kind of a fun little tank, to be honest. Hull armor on the side's not great. It's a okay side scraper for a medium. At 45, not amazing though, so you are going to have some overmatch issues with larger caliber, things like that, penetration issues. Like I said, the turret's pretty good at 220. 0.3 on the dispersion, not amazing. For its mobility, though, it gets up to 50. It used to be slower, so now it can kind of keep up and do medium things. It used to be very, very sluggish. 54.54 on the traverse is actually pretty nice now with this thing. And at 15.85, specific power is getting into the decently mobile, get up and go kind of thing. The stationary and camo is actually pretty good at 27. It's right around Senlac levels that we've talked about just a bit earlier, and view range at 409. A little bit limited on the view range. 409 is not great. for this tank right here, but it's not really your kind of spotting sniper tank. And if you needed to set something like that up, you could obviously use some equipment. Again, I'm not using food or directives, so there are some things you can do to bump up some of those stats. But I just like the hard-hitting nature of it and the relatively fast reload for that alpha of 390. And now that it's a little more mobile and the turret can do its thing a little bit better, pretty cool little tank. So let's take a look at some gameplay for the STG Guard. All right, next on the list is the T103. You'll see I've got it all in purple right there because with the green there, it kind of reminds me of Barney the dinosaur. For those of you who are my age, you may remember that. All the rage some 20, 30 years ago or so for the kids. So we got Barney the dinosaur right here. Great big tall thing, but this turret is really strong. We come over here just real quick. We'll get to it, back to it in a minute, but let's just take a look at this. 220 on the turret. Nice and rounded right there. Crew-wise, the commander is also your radio operator. You do have 2 loaders, which is a little bit wonky down there. One thing I like about the 2 loaders, though, for tanks these days is you have one of them do safe storage and one of them do intuition, and you get 2 really good skills because you don't have to have both of them have those skills for it to work. So just something to think about. This is a pretty good crew with 3 skills working on their 4th. I'm running Vents, Rammer, and IRM. The thing about this tank is I believe there's no vert stab. That's correct. So I went to IRM. There's an argument for enhanced gun laying drive if that's what you want to do as far as aiming speed, or even improved aiming in order to improve your dispersion, because while the gun I like, it's not super accurate at .33. Remember that I'm not running food on any of these tanks, so that will bring down the accuracy. A directive could help, and of course running a IRM or something like that may help get your accuracy down closer to .31 or so, maybe even .3 if you chuck everything at it that you can to improve the gun handling. But I found the gun handling to be okay on most of these tanks like these TDs with kind of average gun handling at .33. A lot of times you have enough time to kind of aim because you are a TD and the way you play is kind of hanging back, so you're able to mitigate a little bit the .33. It does hurt with your snap kind of decisions, stuff like that. Now, equipment-wise, we kind of touched on it, but I don't think there's anything else you would really want to go with other than Vents, Rammer, and the IRM, other than maybe the, IRM. I keep getting IRM and IA mixed up. Other than maybe the IA or potentially the gun lane drive. So that's a little bit to taste, but I think this is probably your best setup right here as far as this thing goes. I wouldn't really bother with camouflage, things like that. It's a big tank, doesn't have a lot of camouflage. You just want to kind of use the spotting system to your advantage, no kidding, just being camoed up in a bush close to the enemy. Because this thing doesn't have a lot of camo, really. So 440 damage is pretty good alpha. We're at 258 penetration, which is really nice for a standard round. That's fantastic. The thing about premiums, when you have a high penetration on premium, that's really great because that helps you do damage without pressing 2. You just got to love that. You got to love that. And if you do press 2, you're going all the way up to 307 on a tier 8, and that's pretty good, especially for an APCR round. That's pretty amazing for an APCR round. Usually it's heat rounds that get up there with all the subsequent negatives from heat rounds. And I'm only carrying 3 high explosives. Not a huge penetration, but can do some good damage right there. Standard kits, large fire extinguisher. As I said, no food is being carried. So back over to here, 9.21 on the loading. If you'll remember, that's actually faster than the STG Guard. It's going to get us up to 2,868 DPM. This thing, if allowed, will drop some pain downrange. 2.1 aiming time is okay, not great. .33, again, okay, not great, but entirely usable. -8 on the gun depression. That's very nice. However, look at the traverse speed of the turret, 18.07. That is extremely slow. It's noticeable. You will notice how slow the turret is. So while this tank can flex to be kind of a medium heavy if needed, especially mid to late game during cleanup phases or repositioning issues, it gives it more flexibility than a casemate, but be careful because you're not going to come in and circle people and you may get caught out a little bit with your turret being slow. So just watch out for that. Hit points wise, we're sitting at 1200. Hull armor is okay at 100. Not really fantastically angled. Right here it is, but this flatter plate's not great. And then you got this kind of rounded stuff down here, which isn't fantastic either. But the turret's at 220, and the trick with this thing is it's so tall. A lot of the rubble and stuff, it's really just sticking up above everything when you're trying to go hold down in, say, cities. But you can use some of the ridge capability at -8 with this thing, and a 220 turret works out okay. Speed is decent, actually. 40 is okay. 40 is decent. I mean, that's up there with your relatively sprightly heavies, so it will come along. So it is kind of a combo of your armored TDs and your armored slow TDs and your glass cannons to some extent. A little more armor than your glass cannons, but not quite as heavily armored as your assault TDs. So it can do a little bit of everything. It is kind of a jack of all trades kind of tank. The hull traverse is okay at 38.34. View range is 418. That's actually better than the STG Guard, and it's a TD. Of course, look at its camo. Just terrible, like I said. I wouldn't waste much time putting anything other than maybe some camouflage paint or whatever on it just to help it a little bit. I wouldn't waste time with camo nets or other things trying to help out this thing's camo. You want to just use the spotting system and know how that works in order to keep this thing from being shot at too much out there. Although, again, the turret will do work on occasion. The turret will do work on occasion. Let's take a look at some gameplay for the T-103 Tier 8 Russian TD. All right, now for my heavy on the list, which is the American Tier 8 Chrysler KGF version. There are two versions of this. There's a Chrysler K, and then this is the grand finals from back when WGLNA was a thing, the league that Wargaming had. 4 crew members in this tank. The commander is the radio operator, so you got a commander, gunner, driver, and loader in this tank. Pretty standard. I have a decent crew in here, 4 skills working on their 5th, although the commander is a little bit further behind. In there, I'm running a vent, rammer, and vert stab. Couple other potential options on this. You could go IRM if you wanted to help out with the traverse, but I don't find that to be a big issue with this. This is not a tank that you want to get in amongst people and start getting shot in the side. You really want to keep everyone forward of this, and I'll show you that when we get into the replay. You want to keep everyone forward of you as much as possible, so I don't really recommend, you don't really need that. Vertical stab is just superior to the GLD and the IA improved aiming. There is an argument potentially to chuck improved hardening on there because one of the things this tank excels at is taking hits to the face, so that may help out in that case for sure. I don't think there's really any argument for much else of any of this stuff in here, but it's to taste. There are other options, but as far as just a good all-rounder, vents, rammer, vert stab, standard act. Lots of ammo. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if anyone's ever been able to run out of ammo in the GF. That would be impressive if they did, because it is carrying 100 rounds. Holy cow. And doing a respectable 320 average damage. The standard pin is low at 198. This was the complaint years back about this tank, also with it not having really any frontal weak spots, is the fact that you really had to dab 2 to do anything. And it gets up to 260, which is not an amazing amount, but okay for APCR. So expect to have to, in some cases or many cases, potentially with power creep these days, press 2 to use the tank effectively. Still, you can do a lot of damage. I'll show you this, and use a considerable amount of gold ammo and still get credits. High explosive, I have 20 in here just because this is such a ridiculous amount of other stuff. It just doesn't really matter. It's not an amazing HE round though, at only 420 and a whole 53 pen, so maybe don't even need 20, but I would never get through all of this anyway. That would be difficult. So we come over here, I've got large kits, I'm running a large fire extinguisher. As with the other 3 we talked about, I'm not running food or directives on these. That would be entirely possible and appropriate if you really wanted to maximize. That being said, we got 320 average damage, that low penetration of 198, a decent rate of fire. The gun loading's at 8.3, so this thing is close to medium level gun firing, and it will take other heavies by surprise. It's not a particularly giant gun, but it's not a 240 alpha gun like some of the fast firing heavies have. It's a 320 alpha gun. That's pretty respectable for as fast as this thing fires, and it gets it up to 2,313 average DPM, which is okay. There's the dispersion at 0.33, not amazing, but look at the aiming time. The aiming time is down to very nice at 1.74. Gun depression is a problem for this tank. It is a rear turret mounted tank. That does make it a bit tricky, a lot like the a lot like the STG Guard. Can be a little bit ungainly to use, but because of the way this thing fights and its frontal armor and its relatively low turret silhouette and the strength of its turret at 254, the rear turret doesn't hurt it too much. We'll see that when we get into the game. 1,500 hit points is pretty good. Hull armor at 152. That's actually very strong, and it's decently angled. Even the lower plate is actually pretty decently armored. And you start putting any kind of angle on it, it's very difficult. However, Once you get too much angle and start exposing the side, it becomes vulnerable. But still, side scrape wise, at 102, that's going to get some auto bounce angles at 102 on the side of the hole. So it is quite a strong side scraper. Very nice, actually. 254 on the turret we mentioned is just extremely strong. And you do a little rocking and moving, you can avoid that kind of little tiny, and it is quite tiny, that little weak spot right there. People are going to have a hard time penetrating that thing's turret. Mobility is a bit sluggish at 35, not great. I think it's actually a little faster than it was, as I recall. Specific power, though, is at 19.74. That's pretty high. So what it means is its top end isn't great, but as far as kind of moving its hull and getting going and rocking back and forth, it's really pretty dang strong, and 15 reverse is not bad at all for a heavy tank right there. So I'm not telling you it's fast, but for a big heavy tank, and because of its kind of weird rear turreted game style, it's nice that it can kind of move around in its local area fairly sprightly for a heavy tank. I think it actually does a pretty decent job with that. 39.09 traverse. There's no camo, it's a heavy tank. And 419 view range, pretty standard right there. So yes, you could do some things to improve some of those stats, but not too bad. And just if you can keep everybody looking at basically that, or maybe even just a little bit, there you go. Something around there, absolute beast. So let's take a look at some gameplay. The slight bummer with the Senlac, and we'll start with this one, is that it doesn't exactly play like the other British light tanks. It doesn't really have the camo to sneak up on people. It has okay light tank camo, but not amazing. We're actually on one of the new maps here, Foothills. This is on one of the recon mode games. So I'm just going to kind of work the middle here a little bit and head down, I believe, to these bushes. We're going to start looking for some lights. And there you go. The ELC has seen me. I saw the ELC. Let me just fix this real quick for my colorblind friends. There we go. If I was professional, that would already be done. So I get spotted. The one thing about this map, just as a side note, I kind of like this middle area. I like this map a lot. It's just that this middle, which is supposedly for light tanks, you can't really do anything but get lit in that middle. It's just too close in. And as you can tell right there, two light tanks immediately saw each other. Even the Even 90, which has great camo, was seen by me. It's just too close, and there's no place to hide. So we're going to start working these bushes here. I will wait till I go dark. Well, maybe not long enough, right? It just got slapped by the 40-43. Here comes the Even 90. He backs out. A little bit surprised. I sort of expected maybe if he had a CVS I was going to get lit right there, but I didn't. So we'll just let the Progetto sit out in the open. I'm getting a lot of snipers coming in behind me, so I'm going to start working on potentially getting these guys lit. Oh, there's the Even 90. Again, a little bit surprised. I'm assuming he's not running a CVS. So I feel like because of my camo not being great, he would have burned through those bushes and seen me pretty easily. But that's a good thing. He takes a hit, so that kind of dissuades him from raging around in the middle. But it's a competent light tank. It can get things done. It can get the lights going on right here. We're sort of locking down these guys just to the south of me. I'd really like to see the ELC die, but he runs off that way. Never work with animals and children, right? The dog. Having your studio in your house. 830 assist, sneaking a little bit closer. See, it's small enough just to move in these bushes, but if it was one of the standard British light tanks, smaller ones, it'd be really easy. I just have to be careful how I kind of work through these bushes right here. 1,001 assist. Now I'm starting to think, should I shoot this guy? I guess I don't need to because he just blew up. That was not my assist, though. I didn't get anything off of that. Although, to be honest, it is sort of my assist because I'm spotting them and they're having to be careful back here. And I'm getting guys shot as they poke their nose out. It's just I didn't get credit for it. Even 90 dies. Now that's going to open up the game a lot for a scout when the other enemy scout is gone. Especially in Even 90 because it's such a tiny scout and has such good camo. It can really outdo me in terms of scouting. So it's nice to have him gone. We're going to just kind of sneak up here a little more. Checking 6. Where are these guys? We don't see them. They have 2 artillery. I really want to avoid being seen by them or targeted by them. Doesn't have a lot of armor. and it's not extremely fast, and it's quite large for a light tank. This thing is very susceptible to being nuked by arty. Now I'm starting to feel like I might just get a little too close to these guys here. But none of them want to poke around. It's a couple G-SORs, or it's a G-SOR and something else. There it is. The CS52 LIS. The G-SOR will end me pretty quickly. So we're just going to keep watching this. We're still sitting at 1,000. You can see the city is starting to lose. We have actually had a lot of campers and guys. They all kind of sat back here, and unfortunately the enemy team didn't do enough poking for us to really wreck them over here. So they've moved through the city, coming out the north side. We do have some snipers back there kind of fighting them off. We have a slight advantage right now in tanks. The hit points are fairly similar. Here comes the G-SOR. Now I know I need to get out of here because he's going to end up proxy lighting me. So we'll just back out in these bushes here. I will accept knocking down the tree just because I know I need to get out of here. I avoided knocking them down earlier. The Scorpion kind of comes around that way. Now we're going to spin around in the bush right here. I see the G-SORs coming up along the side, so I really need to get out of here. So we'll head on out. And unfortunately, we lose some guys trying to push up and help me. But most of the guys that were supporting me have run away. So we'll just head over this way. I'm trying to see if I can't light up the G-SOR down there somehow, but I don't see him. Work back towards the middle. There he is. And this is more of, my issue with this map here is we come up to the middle. I want to try to get some light, some spots and lights, but there's no way to poke here without somebody in the bottom edge of the city seeing me. Somebody on that western edge is pretty easily going to see me. I believe that's what happens right here. There's a 54 mod 1 sitting there potentially. Yeah, I get lit pretty immediately, and I'm like, well, I have no idea what just lit me. Just took a shot at me. Thank goodness the G-SOR missed twice. We'll cruise along over here. KV4, for whatever reason, decides to push up with no support, so he's kind of done that on his own over there. I think this is where I end up finding the 50. The arty actually takes a poke at me right there. Oh, there's that guy. I shouldn't have stood in. I should have immediately backed out, so he gets an easy shot on me right there. And we'll turtle up here from the artillery for a bit. There was one looking at me. So the mod 1's actually moved into the western part of the city right there. The push by the purples into the north has gone poorly for them. And it looks like there's just their campers and the guys over here on the west side left, other than the 54 mod 1 hanging out in the middle. So we got 1,001 assist and 165 damage. The thing about light tanks, guys, is you get them to the mid to late game like we are right now, and that's when you're going to start getting a bunch of damage and assist. You got to keep yourself alive for this. There we go. This dude's just, I'm not sure where he is. He starts moving out. He's behind a rock or something right there in the middle camping area. And then I get spotted again, which, to be honest, I don't really know. I don't have a great camo, so very possibly the G-SOR has come around the corner and he has enough spotting to see me. We'll head back over this way. Trading arty shots. You see one going one way and one going the other. So I'll just back away, get a little further away, put him on the edge of the spotting ring right there. And we'll start creeping forward and see if we can't track down this Scorpion. 54 mod 1 has done us a favor and pushed in. So there we go, a little shot on him. There we go. And I'm ready. Here's the kill. Oh, we're spotted. There we go. Now we got to chogi out of here. Nice big flat area. I'm really expecting the Scorpion to punish me. He either doesn't have a shot or wasn't paying attention. And we'll flex through the city right here. Come out the back end. We have 2 artillery to track down a Scorpion G. I know where the G-SOR is. He's kind of pinned down over there by the KV4 and the ISU, so not too worried about him being over in this area. I hadn't been in this part of the map, so I'm going to actually go explore this back corner. I sort of expected to find an artillery back here, but I believe I don't. There we go. We actually find this dude. So we got HE going. 274, that's not bad. He backs out. I don't get lit. That makes me feel like maybe there's not a artillery back in here somewhere, but there's enough rocks and things, you may be actually physically behind one of them. Like I said, I was a bit surprised I didn't find anybody in here. There's actually some spaces back behind there I didn't quite go. I guess I did go look at them. So a little bit surprising there was no one there. Which means, unfortunately, I'm going to find the last three of them kind of bunched up together in one spot here. Yep, got lit coming in. So I figured, yep, there's the Artie. We shoot and armor not hit. That's a bummer. The good news is he doesn't really hurt me. I don't know. That may have been just one of those HE rounds that has very little splash and no stun. So a little bit lucky he didn't nuke me. I think if that thing had hit me directly, it'd be all over. Still running the HE because I'm dealing with a Scorpion. There we go. 265 on that one. Not bad. I get nuked by my own guy. That's 310. We finish him off. That works. So we're up to 1,614, 1,800 assist. And we nuke that guy. Although it looks like somebody else hit him right before I did, or maybe he was already down hit points. I didn't really see that. We get to 1,753, 1,810 assist, and 3 kills. I like this tank, man. This is a it's not the best scout in the game, but it just has, as an all-rounder, it's a pretty good all-rounder light tank. Quite enjoyable. So if you don't like the ninja long reload, hide everywhere kind of, ELC 90 / British light tank gameplay, and you like a more standard kind of combat light tank, this might fit the bill for you. And I'm not telling you it's an LT 432 level combat light tank, but once you get it to the mid to late game, it can be a beast. Whereas if you get the standard British tech tree tanks to this part of the game, they are effective, but you can't really run in and just start pounding on people because the reload is so long. This thing gives you some options in terms of dropping some DPM mid to late game. All right, let's move on. STG Guard. Here's how I like to play this thing. What this tank won't really do for you very well is get into that DPM circling brawl with other mediums. What it can do is support the heck out of your heavies in the heavy brawl area because it's dropping that 390. That 390 is nice for getting rid of tanks that are hanging around. So what I'm going to do here is just be very careful. There we go. So we are shooting gold, right? We want to get that poor 212 pin up a bit so we can do something. And there's an example of the long reload. A standard medium would have taken that shot much faster than I did because it reloads so much faster. This one just takes a little while. That means you have to have a little bit of care in how you handle it. But in terms of getting into these big bad brawls, you're taking big chunks off of tanks. And if you can avoid the return fire, which I know is standard for any tank, but especially in this one, and you can allow yourself to get reloaded and get more shots, it is a monster. So we'll come on here and see if we can get a shot on this guy. We're going to get lit doing that. There we go. See, the IS-5 lit me and I eat that shot. I don't have a whole lot of hope if he's shooting me in the hole of bouncing that. And things are kind of looking bad in the city right here, so we're just going to be really careful. There's the side scrape thing going on. Now, its side scrape capability is limited, but the other thing about side scraping that doesn't get talked about much is it does limit the exposure of your tank. So it's a little bit harder for people just physically to put the pipper on you and take a shot at you. So less of your tank is showing, that's good. So even though maybe you're not the side scraping monster, as in, hey, I'm going to bounce everything because of my awesome armor, you're side scraping also to minimize the exposure of your tank, so it is harder for the return shot to come in. Anything you can do to make it harder for them to hit you. Okay, there's the LIS. Little shot on him. At these ranges, the .33 or so dispersion doesn't hurt as much. It doesn't hurt as much. Clearly, you'd like to have better if you could, but it's not that bad. So then we got the LIS again. That just missed. As I'm talking about how there's... In fact, I may have hit the turtle, actually, because I didn't see him there. I very well may have actually just hit the turtle. There we go. And we dropped that guy with a 405. A 405. That, I mean, that's awesome for a medium tank. It was a high roll, but 405 hit points put that guy into one-shot territory. We dropped the defender. He's gone. We're just hanging around, right? Supporting our heavies. This low is kind of staring at me, so I'm going to sneak one into his... Oop, there we go. We take a hit. Get another one into the Lurva. We do 316 to him. Well, that's quite the low roll. 390 alpha, and we get a 316 roll. That's terrible. So here we go. We're just going back to the side scrape thing. That's a bounce. We're not even going to worry about aiming in. We just don't want that return shot. We'll take the bad dispersion. He gets absolutely jumped upon by these guys. So now we're going to push in. We're going to bring that big 390 alpha into the fight. Didn't matter. He died. We're just going to go around. The turtle fires. They reload really quickly. I might even take another shot from him as I go by, as I recall. Yep. That's just how fast that thing reloads. Decent mobility, so in this case it can do medium tank things when it needs to. I don't think I get the kill here as I recall. Nope. Type 61 takes him down. And now it's just cleanup. So we'll go forward, we'll head down here. I don't think I get another shot in actually. If I do, it's on the back of somebody maybe. The ISU is back in the corner. I actually bounced. So there's the turret doing its thing, right? He bounced it off the turret, the nice round turret. I was moving, so it's going to be a little harder for him to hit. He was probably aiming at my hole, and I got the his dispersion is not great on that. So there you have it. I don't get any more damage. 2,833, no assists. We've got 2 kills, and in there in the city doing city things, supporting my heavies with that big 390 alpha. And as long as this tank is allowed to do its thing, or you can fight it in a manner that suits it, it's going to actually be a pretty good little tank. I quite enjoy this thing. It's a goofy medium, but I think sometimes in the game you just have to play something that's a little different and goofy and enjoy that. So there you go. My recommendation, the STG. Actually, this is not the Guard version, but they're the same tank. They're like, Guido, it's not the STG Guard. Correct. It's the STG. Same tank, basically. All right, let's move on to the next. All right, we join this game in progress. Here we go. We've got Barney, the T-103. We're on Prokhorovka, spawned in to the south. And on the 1-2 line, surprise, surprise, it's a good place for TDs. What I like about the TDs like the T-103 in situations like this is the turret allows them to have more flexibility to kind of track targets. A casemate's going to look right down the 1-2 line. Anytime he wants to go somewhere else, he has to shift the entire hole, whereas the T-103, I can move the turret around and find things to shoot at right there. This was a weird game. You can see that we put nobody over on the east side other than one TVP, who I believe is about to die over there, the 50-51. So this is a tier 10 battle. I'm bottom tier, but I'm not that bummed about being bottom tier with this particular tank because it's got enough penetration, it's got a good enough gun and good enough DPM that we can do some work. And I'm really thinking at this point we've lost. So I say 1-2 push or we lose. We start to kind of do that a little bit. Interestingly, they sent very few on the 1-2 line, so this is a big ring around the rosy thing going. We went all the way over to the west. They all went to the east, and now we're just kind of circling each other here. So I can reposition with Barney here and head back over this way and try to stop this push that's coming across the tracks. Now, this was a mistake by the enemy team. It's one of the things I teach a lot when I do coaching or teaching for World of Tanks. Just notice that, yes, they won the East, and yes, we won the West, but there's a lot of guns left in the game. And that means that when you start moving out into the open and go after caps, which caps tend to be in the open, you're going to start getting shredded by people. So we see that guy up there. The KPZ-07 is doing a nice job of spotting. He's not the scout we wanted, but he's the scout we need right now, right? In fact, he's the only scout we have. I'm going to try to sneak one in on this guy, but don't know if it hits. There we go. So the IS-7 breaks cover. The IS-22 breaks cover. I go after the IS-22. He's just got worse armor. So let's try to shred him first, and then we'll start working on the IS-7 there. T-54 makes a move in there. Nice, decently fast reload. That went behind him because I did not lead fire. That was entirely my fault. Bit difficult when you're looking through bushes to try to hit guys when they're doing something like this. That time got a little bit lucky again, not as much lead fire. I'm hoping somebody can take him down. He goes dark and then he appears again. And now he's behind that little ridge, but the IS-7's out in the open. Now, the IS-7 is down in a bit of a ditch, though, or a low spot. See how he's coming in now? I'll just zoom out. So the IS-22 is no longer seen because of that ridge. The T-54 has done a nice job. I have enough bushes for the moment, but this dude's in this low spot, and he's going to come up and over right about where this road is. I know that's there, so I need to back out. The KPZ is doing a nice job spotting him, though, because we need to know where he is. So we'll just keep backing out. Here he comes. Just do a nice aim into that low spot on his lower armor. And I get spotted doing that, which surprised me a little bit. Probably the T-54 saw me is what I'm thinking, although he's up here now. That just surprised me, to be honest. I don't know if the IS-22 was closer than I thought, or these bushes just weren't as good as I thought. Quite surprised the IS-7 got a look at me right there. I kind of figure he's going to die. We're just going to reposition over here and head off this way. What he's done is he's backed up and got into the low spot again, so I don't want to just sit there and get spotted by him and shredded by all the snipers back there, so we'll just kind of change what we're doing for a moment. There goes the IS-7. Nice shot on the T-54. The question becomes now, where's the IS-22? You can see that what's happened is we pushed into their guys camping into the open and got beat up. They pushed into our guys camping and went into the open and got beat up. And here we are, more or less even, owning each respective side of the map. So we're going to get into the other thing that I like about tanks like this TD-wise. Mid to late game, if you can get there, you have flexibility with a turret. And so I'm going to flex into being more of a medium/heavy tank at this point. I'm going to stop being a hiding TD, and I'm going to push forward and get some hit points off these guys. We've got 1,700 and 227 assists, and we're just going to come in here and go after this T-54. So even 90's pushing in, everybody's going for it. So if you want to up your DPM and do more damage, get more experience, get more credits, these mid to late game pushes like this are things you need to start doing. So I'm just going to auto aim them with the old T-103. Look at the slowness of the turret. What I don't want to do is get too close. I don't want to get too close because then the turret slowness becomes an issue in the ungainly nature of the tank. I actually hit this guy through that little space between the two vehicles right there. That worked out very nicely. We're at 2,600. Staying high altitude wise on this terrain just because I know if I'm going to get a shot it's going to be from here. If I go too close to the train tracks I won't be able to see the guy. Now he's making a runner. We'll just let that zoom in nicely and just bloop, drop that onto him. I don't think I get any more damage. All the way over here. Yep, that's the end of that. That's the end of that. 2,935 damage in the bottom tier with 373 assists. We end up with a kill in there on the prototype. I just like this TD, man. The flexibility it gives. Most casemates would have done okay in that game because I really didn't get spotted except for the one time. I just like the flexibility, though, and I wanted to show that in this game. This tank can turn into the medium/heavy if needed. And when you have a TD that can do that, that gives you a lot more choices in the mid to late game. So picking up close ones. And this was a relatively close game for a long time. They kind of collapsed right at the end, but it was a tit for tat for a long time in there. All right, let's look at the last one. All right, Chrysler GF. Here we go, Chrysler KGF. And we're just going to go to this little corner and we're going to do frontal armor games with these guys. Boom. All right, yes, we've dabbed too. Absolutely. Got some heavy armor over there, so we're going to need that to punch through. Need, I don't know. Desire, want, right? Oh. I want. Basante's thinking about it. All right, here's the beauty of APCR. It doesn't care as much about spaced armor. Okay, that was well angled 100-01. I'm probably not going to pen him. I'm going to have to do something a little better against him. Look at that. Just minimize side scraping monster. That is way over angled, my friend. There you go. Not really hammering him for hard damage. 291 is good, but not amazing. Remember, it's a 320 alpha gun. So he's just over angled, doing very poorly. 326, little high roll right there. The thing about lower alpha guns is when the high roll happens, it's not that impressive, right? Yeah, that was never going to pin. He was well angled. Now, I get 3 guys coming up here. So now it's time to really get into some face punching fun right here. We're going to keep the angle. Nice fast reload. He does get a piece of me. We'll scoot forward. That'll make it harder for him to hit anything important. This is where side scraping is working for this tank, right? They continue to come around and poke. I'm able to side scrape. That's fine. What I don't have here is a real ability. I think I actually pick at his weak spot there. What you don't have when you're doing something like this is a real ability to push hard when it's time to push hard and win. We sneak another shot in. Look at that. So we've taken 1,280 bounce. We got 2,482. One of the other nice things about a tank like this, in a situation he turns his turret and allows me to do that, is if they're spending a lot of time trying to shoot you, your buddies have a lot of options. Now he gets a shot on me because of my side armor. I'm able to take him down. I know they're all near dead, so I really just want to push in and take him down. We'll just be a little bit careful here. I was worried about maybe this, but he's making a runner, so we'll just sneak a shot on him as he goes. Now here's where it becomes dangerous with this tank. Maneuvering in and making sure they don't get side armor shots. Like that. So the T-28 just hammered me from the side, and now I'm this is a bummer. This is not where you want to be with this tank. Making a choice between getting shot in the side by this guy or that T-28, and the T-28 has all kinds of pin. Good news is my buddy kills the one behind me. The rest of my team kills the 100-01, and I'm able to bounce again with it. I have actually a fairly decent angle right there against the T-28. There he goes. He takes a blind shot. That's exactly what I would do. Unless I'm still lit, it's possible. I'm just going to make a runner for this building here, just in case he does still see me. Well, he sees the Basante. I'm not really sure. I'm like, where would he be exactly? Must be a bush there somewhere that he can see me. I'm not as familiar with this map. This is another one of the recon mode maps, Place of Power. Quite liked this map also. I think we're going to end up finding this T-28. So I'm up to 2,400 bounce, 3,488 damage done. It's a romple, right? We're crushing them. And I'm just hoping my mediums will get in there and start getting lights on that guy. There he is, found him. And I get lit. Little shot into his side because he's over angled to me. There we go. Get another one into him, a 308. Might as well side scrape a little bit. No sense in giving him a nice easy shot into the lower plate. We'll push on in. I don't think I get any more damage here, to be honest. No, they just all die. I try to push in. Barras gets killed. And that's that. 4,119 damage, 2,400 bounce, 230 assist. And exactly what I was talking about when we did the overview on this tank. When allowed to do its thing, it's a monster. And they really had a hard time pinning me. Let's see if we have any. Probably the only pins were in the side. Yep, there's one in the side right there. Another one in the side right there. So nice big flat spot. It is 100 millimeters, so you want to put angles on it. But flat wise, yeah, stuff's going straight through that big billboard side. So you can see those are the two places really. And I don't think they really didn't look like they even got into any of my weak spots ever. Look at all the bounces off the front. You gotta love it. You gotta love it. Let's wrap it up, guys. Well, all right, my friends, those are my 4 tanks right there. We've got the Senlac at the light tank spot. We have the STG Guard at the medium tank spot. We have the T-103 Russian Tier 8 TD with a turret at the TD spot, and we have a Chrysler KGF. I chose one of each class. I realized, obviously, for the light tank, there is only one light tank in there, and TD-wise, I believe there is only one TD as well. But I quite like all those tanks, and I thought it worked out pretty nicely to have one from each class in there. To be honest, none of these are terrible. None of these are terrible. We're not really going to talk about the lower tier stuff. I mean, the RBFM is decent. The Teeth Reverse Shield is okay. Hydrostat is maybe slightly below average. But for the tier 8s and 10s, and even the 7 really, they're all pretty good tanks overall. It's just those are the 4 that I would recommend that you try out. And they've all got really nice little strengths. If you don't like the rear turret STG Guard medium-wise, I would go with the Mutts. That's probably the next choice, and then the Patton as number 3. You don't have any other choices with the light tank right there. Heavy tanks, you have quite a few choices, to be quite honest, in here. The Patriot is decent heavy tank. I just think it's been power crept, and that 240 Alpha it's hard to use. It's hard to do really well. But again, decent hold down tank, pretty good turret, decent mobility, good stuff like that. I would honestly stay away, unfortunately, from the preferential matchmaking tanks. They kept preferential matchmaking on the tanks a while back. They wanted to buff them so they became basically as strong as regular tanks. They do only C9s, but they struggle a bit, and you're going to be shooting a bunch of gold on these things. And they have buffed the standard pin. It's actually probably about STG Guard levels, really, and maybe even better than the Chrysler K. But still, I don't know. I love these 2 tanks, the IS-6B and the Alpine Tiger / WZ-111, which is the standard version of it. I have a soft spot in my heart for both of these, but I would probably prioritize those last on a list of the heavy tanks. The 730, the Object 730 is okay, not great. The Crest is just a weird little thing right there, just a weird little thing. So really, in the heavy regime, it is the Chrysler K and the Patriot that dominate right there. And as far as TDs go, you only have one choice. You got the 103, or you go to Tier 5 with the RBFM, which these lower tier premiums just don't make as much credits. You really want to, in terms of getting credits, get yourself some of these Tier 8 premiums. Especially for the free-to-play, as we mentioned earlier. Bonds you can get just playing the game, and you can come out with some basically free, other than spending your bonds, premium tanks to use in the game. So there you go, guys. That's my list. Senlac, T103, STG Guard, Chrysler KGF. Let me know what you think down below. Which ones are your favorites in here? And if you have a different list, go ahead and chuck it out there. That's all I've got. Thanks for coming by. I do appreciate the support of the channel, and we'll see you guys later.